Okay, I'm back. All right, so I left the security of my cozy, warm couch with all of the nice pillows. There's a lot of pillows around me that you can't see. Um, yeah, and this blanket. How good is this blanket? uh, to get some snacks, make a coffee, and it was so cold. Once I left it, it was so cold. If you've ever seen the movie Titanic, where like Leonardo DiCaprio's character meets Kate Winslet's character for the first time, and she's like at the bow or the stern of the Titanic, and she's about to jump into the Atlantic Ocean. It's wintertime. The waters are sub-zero, icy cold, and Leonardo DiCaprio's character is like, you know what it's gonna feel like when you jump in there? It's gonna be like 1,000 knives, dabbing at your body at the same time. That's what it was like when I left the couch and the blanket. Okay, if Kate Winslet's character had actually jumped in, okay, you weren't here, you don't know, okay. Anyways, um, just despite the adversity of the elements, we've got an issue. We've got an essay to write, and we complete our missions regardless of weather conditions, whatever season it is, whatever terrain issues we have. So we're gonna soldier on here. We'll get through this. All right. Where were we? We were kind of in the second draft. Okay. All right. I realized I had a hiccup, and I'd completed the first draft, and what happened? Yeah, I looked back at it to see whether I'd addressed the essay question, and I realized there was an elephant in the room which I hadn't addressed, and that was the part that talks about mentioning or proposing a solution. And although I've gone with economic sanctions, really that just covers the part of the essay task sheet that says, are economic sanctions required? If so, why? If not, why not? And the question about whether the question that says something along the lines of, why might world leaders be unwilling to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, even though the habitability of planet Earth with respect to humankind depends on it. All right, but there's an elephant in the room about nations footing the economic bill and suffer an economic downturn associated with the reduction in uh, their carbon footprint, which is going to harm their industries because most economies are tied to fossil fuels, most developed economies. Uh, and, it would be unfair if some nations were paying, like footing the bill more than their shares worth, in proportion to how much greenhouse gas emissions they emit, and this kind of unfair sharing of the cost between carbon emitters, greenhouse gas emitters, whatever, uh, is something that could make some nations decide to take, opt for non-cooperation, and perhaps start to view non-cooperation as the cheaper alternative, despite economic sanctions. So I realized that in some of my research, I read an interesting passage by Gauss, a social philosopher or political philosopher. Those things are the same thing, pretty much. Also a moral philosopher. Um, he was talking about the threshold effect. Yeah, like supposing that, oh, I better get my Pomodoro started because I realized that chess games actually make the timer restart so that the time elapsed to zero and you're back at the first interval. So I'll get that going. I'm not going to play chess in the breaks because that'll reset the timer. Okay, yeah. So, the threshold effect. So one way of understanding this threshold effect is, imagine I lived in some apartment building in the city, and the air is dirty because there's pollution, and that pollution is caused by the emissions from all of the traffic in the city. And if those people weren't driving motor vehicles and polluting the air would be clean and it wouldn't trigger my asthma. But they are driving vehicles and it does trigger my asthma. And who's responsible? Well, it seems like the responsibility is so diluted between all of the people who are driving their motor vehicles that each motor vehicle driver is just a tiny bit responsible for the fact that I don't get around in my apartment with as I don't get around as healthy as I could, had they not decided to drive their motor vehicles. Um, but let's suppose I was, I knew how much everyone drives. I had that data somehow, and what would that enable me to do? That would enable me to come up with some metric that determines that some people contribute more to my asthma, you know, in virtue of polluting the air, more than other motorists. And if I, uh, I could hold some motorists more responsible than others. It doesn't seem like there's anything I could practically do about it. But if I just wanted to care about who was responsible and know, who was more responsible than some other motorist, I could pick any two motorists in my list and use my metric and say, oh, motorist A is more responsible for my difficulty breathing than motorist B, for instance. So, there are metrics that track how much each country emits. Uh, and, such a metric, I imagine, analogous to my thought experiment about the asthma, could be used uh, to determine what the fair share of the cost is. Uh, some nations emit more than others, so they have to curb their emissions relative to the total amount of, for instance, emissions they let off per year or something like that. Okay, so I don't have to get too much into the detail uh, because I'm making a philosophical argument in an essay, and the more detailed I go, the more I start to sound like a policy advisor. But I suppose for this part of the essay question, I do have to be a little bit of a policy advisor. Propose at least one solution. I think that's a decent outline for something we could argue. Now, this threshold effect that Gauss speaks of, I remember that referred to the scenario in which, suppose, my asthma could tolerate air that was polluted by, let's say, 1,000 motorists. Okay, once it hit 1,000 motorists on the streets of the city, the air became too dirty, and I would get asthma attacks, for instance, or it would trigger my asthma or something like that. Okay, well, who's really responsible for triggering my asthma? Uh, well, maybe we might think, whichever motorists uh, exceeded the threshold. But the thing is, they're all contributing to approach that threshold. And it's not as if the 999th motorist is less responsible than the 1000th motorist, even though the 1000th motorist that started to drive in the city is the one that pushed it over the threshold. And that's because, if you remove the 999th motorist, who isn't the one that pushed it over the threshold, then would be under the threshold. Okay. Similarly, if you removed, sorry, the 1000th motorist, the one that actually did push it over the threshold, if we removed that motorist from the streets of the city, it wouldn't be over the threshold anymore, and I wouldn't, my asthma wouldn't get set off. So, I mean, this actually holds for any one of the 1000 motorists who have collectively pushed it over the threshold. The removal of any single one of them, it seems, would maintain the air in such a way that it wouldn't trigger my asthma. So, that's what Gauss was referring to here when he was talking about environmental harms having a threshold effect. All right. And then he goes on to ask who is responsible. And I sort of preempted his answer a bit there in my thinking. But, in order to address this issue, he comes up with the public harm principle. If an accumulation of X actions, for example, the cars driving in the city, causes a serious setback to welfare interests, and firstly, if the harm is serious enough that its prevention warrants limiting, in other words, the curtailment of liberties, limiting the liberty to do X, either by regulating or prohibiting Xing, then there is good public reason to limit the liberty of everyone to do X. And secondly, everyone who does X is responsible for a share of the harm done, and there is good reason to require everyone that does X to contribute to any compensation paid to the victims. Oh, so according to Gauss, I could do something about it. Right, anyways. So clause 2 makes every instance of crossing the lawn, yeah, because Gauss also used a lawn crossing example, as responsible for some harm done to the lawn. Note that in a threshold harm scenario, some such initial number of people doing X causes no harm. Yeah, just like if only 500 people were driving in the city, in one sense it causes harm, to the environment, but for me, with my asthma, it doesn't cause any harm because my asthma can tolerate only 500 people driving in the city. So that must be what he means there. So some such initial number of people Xing causes no harm, and some such tail end number of X's cause no harm. So they might argue, just like the 950th person, that's like a tail end person that's doing X, that's driving their car in the city. They might argue that they cause no harm. Yeah, but the public harm principle denies this option. Why was that again? Why did it deny this option? Clause 2. It was clause 2, which was up here. And that said, everyone who does X is responsible for a share of the harm done. There's good reason to require everyone that does X to contribute to any compensation paid to the victims. Okay. All right. All right. Let's collect my thoughts. All right. Clause 2 makes every instance of crossing the lawn responsible for some harm done to the lawn. Note that the threshold harms are some such initial number of Xing. Okay, causes no harm, so they might argue that they cause no harm, but the public harm principle denies this option. Okay, and clause 1 means that everyone has reason to bear some of the cost in preventing the harm. So if we, yeah, because you're talking about limiting the liberty to do the action that causes the harm. All right, cool. So if we accept the public harm principle, everyone's liberty can be prohibited to do X. Or everyone's liberty to do X can be prohibited. Okay, so I guess one option to address that elephant in the room of, people or nations paying their fair share of the cost with respect to the economic downturn that comes with reducing one's carbon emissions. One way to deal with that, right, and be able to propose a solution is to just argue that Gauss's public harm principle, well, first, I'd have to explain the public harm principle, and then I would have to argue for it, and then I suppose I would have to say that it applies to this scenario, right? And that in one sense it applies ethically to this scenario, but also in a more practical sort of policy way it applies because it seems to fit nicely with my idea of using some kind of metric to determine to what degree people are or nations are responsible for the damage to the environment. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to have to use all of this evidence and reference it to make an argument like that. But before I do anything with it, what I should do is I should go back to the previous draft because there was, a paragraph in there which I got rid of, like a templated paragraph which I'd planned and I got rid of. And what was that? That was like body paragraph 3 and I struck it out. So because I have to plan another paragraph because we had a hiccup, right? And we were saved from the hiccup by the task sheet because it's, I should consult the task sheet whenever I am wondering whether I'm on the right track. I'm going to grab that paragraph template and stop sharing because I don't know what I'm sharing. Go back to the second draft 2. Okay, and then I'm going to pop it in here, right? Either there or somewhere else. Well, I'd like the objection to stay at the end, and this objection seems to link nicely to the conclusion. So maybe I'll pop it in here before the objection, but then I'd have to change that linking sentence. All right, well, which linking sentence do I want to choose? Well, maybe, because all this templatey stuff is just a guide. It doesn't have to be a linking sentence. It could be 2 sentences. Maybe I can leave that there and just add to it. Okay. What can I add to it? I need to talk about addressing the cost. So first, before I do that, it's going to be easier to decide what to do up here once I actually have a topic sentence, right, with the evidence and everything else, right? Because then I can see what I'm trying to link to. So I'll do this first and I'll unstrike it. I'm going to get rid of this topic sentence because that's not going to be our topic sentence. That's one that I grabbed from my previous draft. Backspace it because we need a new topic sentence. This evidence isn't going to be what we use. Okay. The evidence that I'm going to use is going to come from our third source. So my third source, that's Gauss. That was Gauss, public harm principle, threshold effects, all that good stuff. All right, so let's get back to here, our third source. Let's grab that evidence. All right. And we might not end up using it all, okay? But we'll see how we go. Let's get our second draft. All right, let's put this evidence in here. All right, I'm not going to read it because I don't want to make a topic sentence fit the evidence, right? Well, actually, that is kind of what you do, because you come up with a topic sentence, you realize you must have had some reasons for believing it, okay? And those reasons are your evidence, and they can come from your research, they can come from your own thinking. All right, so what might my topic sentence be? Do I have enough coffee to come up with a topic sentence? All right, there's like a few more sips. And that would involve 1,000 knives stabbing at my body as if I'm Kate Winslet in Titanic. Worth it. Okay, let's think our way through this. Okay. Okay, some world leaders, right, some world leaders may may I'm just going to say may be concerned that their nations or states, whatever their nations, release less carbon emissions than others, and that an agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions backed by economic sanctions may not divide the cost of reduction between nations in fair proportion to how much each nation, insert relative here, fair proportion relative to how much each nation emits. Okay, that's our topic sentence. Okay. All right. All right. Remember, topic sentence doesn't just have to be one sentence. So you're gonna have to say something like, since some nations are less responsible for environmental degradation than others, we require some means of distributing some means to distribute the economic burden fairly. Okay, right. So it's really the first sentence that would be the topic sentence there. Actually, seems like this is more like a topic sentence because that's what I'm arguing. that we need a means, and then I actually go on to propose a means. So I'm going to Control X, Control V, and space. All right, good. All right, then I've got this evidence here. Then I have a linking sentence. All right, and the linking sentence we're typically going to leave. But what we shouldn't leave right now is the linking sentence above. And we need that linking sentence to link to the topic sentence of body paragraph 3. So what does that linking sentence say? Not only is it morally permissible, but practically necessary to escape the prisoner's dilemma and avoid catastrophic economic damage. All right, now remember, it can be two sentences. All right, I'm trying to say, right, like, now that we've argued that economic sanctions are morally permissible and in fact, required to get out of a prisoner's dilemma, we've got to address this other issue, dividing the economic burden. All right, I don't want to use a rhetorical question because several reasons why they are bad to put in essays. So I don't want to say like, okay, how then should we divide the cost? Question mark, and then go on. Yeah, that would be a rhetorical question. So why don't I just take the rhetorical question? I'll write it down. How then would we divide this economic? Then how then would we divide the cost of economic? Divide the cost of green. Okay, how then would we divide the economic? Maybe I do need that coffee. Economic cost of greenhouse gas emissions fairly. So I'll go question mark, all right? Even though I don't want a rhetorical question in the essay, but this is going to help me take the rhetorical question and turn it into something not rhetorical. All right, so what would be the form of this statement, or this question expressed as a statement? It would be something like this. So I'm just going to highlight this so I know that I need to get rid of it, or use a strike through because it looks cool. All right. How then would we divide the economic cost of greenhouse gas emissions fairly? Just in case I unstrike it. I'm going to say, but, I'm still striking. Just got to keep striking, bro. How then would we divide the economic cost of greenhouse gas emissions? Okay, like, but the economic cost of emission reduction must be distributed early. Does that link? Let's get rid of this strikey stuff, right? Because we just used it to build some non-strikey stuff. Backspace. Okay, now let's read that. Not only is it morally permissible, but practically necessary to escape the prisoner's dilemma and avoid catastrophic environmental and economic damage. But the economic cost of emission emissions. I'm just going to put greenhouse in here. Greenhouse gas emissions reduction must be distributed fairly between nations. Oh, there's the beep, but I'll keep reading. Since some nations are less responsible for environmental degradation than others, we require some names to distribute the economic burden fairly. So then I'd just be repeating myself. I want to repeat myself, but the economic cost. So I'm reading the linking sentence, but the economic cost of greenhouse gas emission reduction must be distributed. Okay, but I'll say this. We still must determine how to distribute the economic cost, I need an E in front, cost of greenhouse gas emission reduction fairly. There we go. That way we don't repeat ourselves. All right. So in a break, it's a 5-minute break. I'm gonna snooze. And I'm speaking out of scenario now. I'm gonna snooze for like 5 minutes until the beep goes off, because I'm pretty tired. And this couch is just cozy. All right. And if I sleep, I won't think about the 1,000 knives. So I'm going to snooze for 5 minutes until the beep goes off. I'm just going to take a sip of the sweet nectar. And yeah, watch the riveting movie that is the back of my eyelids. See you soon. Oh, that beep really is like an alarm. I tell you, you can't hear it on your end, but it's not nice. Right, let's crack on. Where was that before? Oh, yes, I was making sure that this linking sentence at the end of the second body paragraph linked to the topic sentence of the third body paragraph. Let's read it, see how it sounds. Not only is it morally permissible, but practically necessary to escape the prisoner's dilemma and avoid catastrophic environmental and economic damage. All right. But we still must determine how to distribute the economic cost of greenhouse gas emissions reduction fairly. It's a clunky sentence, but that's for polishing, and polishing isn't for right now. Since some nations are less responsible for environmental degradation than others, we require some means to distribute the economic. It still sounds like I'm repeating myself. What I can do is, like any time when looking at an essay and seeing I've I'm being repetitive. I've repeated myself. I'll delete one of the repetitions. If there are two places where I've said the same thing, I'll delete that from one of the places, and then, so long as my math checks out, there'll only be one place where I've said that thing. I like the sound of that. Let's delete it from here. Goodbye. Goodbye, comma. Okay, since some nations are less responsible, let's read it again. Not only is it morally, but we still must determine how to distribute the economic cost of greenhouse gas emissions reduction fairly. Very clunky. Since some nations are less responsible for environmental degradation than others. Oh, hello, comma. Can we get back together? I missed you. Some world leaders may be concerned that their nations release less carbon emissions than others, and that an agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions backed by economic sanctions may not divide the cost of reduction between nations in fair proportion relative to how much each nation emits. So clunky, that's going to get cut down so much in polishing. Right. Now, I think some of the stuff I've set up here is going to be able to connect to this evidence. So I'll say something like, something like, something like this. Environment can tolerate some degradation. Some world leaders may view their nation I'm going to say nations, right? So we're consistent between singularity and plurality. Some world leaders may view their nations as not responsible for exceeding the environmental threshold. environmental, spelled it out, didn't spell it right, threshold. All right. Okay, so the public harm principle, put this in italics, public harm principle can help address this issue. All right, can help address this issue. Well, how, Billy? How? Well, before you can say how it can address the issue, you should say what it is, not the issue, the public harm principle. And what's the public harm principle? Let's consult our notes. So where am I at? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go back to sharing. I'm going to go back to sharing my evidence, or my research, sorry. That was source 3. Okay, actually, why would I come back here? It's in the draft. Go back to the draft. Drafty, where are you? There you are, boy. Here's a good draft. Not this one. But the next one will be better. Okay. So where's the part where it says what the public harm principle is? Here it is. It's that second bullet point there. Okay. It can be stated. The principle is as follows. Okay, I'm going to put this in quotation marks for now, and then I'm going to change it later because I don't need to quote the public harm principle. I can put it in my own words. All right, and I'm going to highlight that. If an accumulation of X actions causes a serious setback to welfare interests, just copy and paste the rest, then clause 1 we'll say here, principle has 2 clauses. And I'll do something like this. 1. All right, and I'm going to go so I don't get confused. 1. If an accumulation of X actions causes a serious setback to welfare interests, I'm going to say Gauss's public harm principle. Wait, not there. That's not where I'll say it. So yeah, I will say here, in place of the Gauss's public harm principle, Gauss some credit, mentioned by name. Gauss's public harm principle can help address the issue. The principle has two clauses. All right. If an accumulation of X actions causes a serious setback to welfare interests, then this should really come after the colon. Then let's clause 1. Here, here. All right, I'll close these quotation marks there. All right. Get rid of that. Over here. Clause 2. All right, so because I'm like, just taking parts of the quote, I'll put those in there. Because clause 1 was written this way in Gauss's text, and I'm using these numbered bullet points, so it's actually not taking the whole, like the quote in full. I'm leaving out the way he wrote the clauses, the way Gauss wrote the clauses. All right, then clause 2, everyone who X's is responsible for a fair share for a share of the harm done, and there is good reason to require all X's to contribute to any compensation paid to the victims. All right, so I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna copy that. Quotation mark, slam it in there. Quotation mark. Gonna get this evidence. That's not part of my little referencing tag isn't part of the quote. Put a referencing tag there. Gauss's public harm principle. And I'll put a little referencing tag here. All right. Okay, then continuing on with the paragraph. What am I going to write now? All right, well, the principle is really about like these harms that add up to exceed a threshold. Okay, so we've stated the principle, but kind of need to explain it. So, like the principle is about the accumulation of public harms, right? Accumulation of public harms that have a threshold effect, really. That have a threshold effect. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is we'll use Gauss's example with the lawn, right? Now, in a later draft, we will, and I'm going to highlight all of this because we're going to put it into our own words. Like maybe we won't, because maybe, it's okay to use quotes so long as you are going to engage with the quotes or, explain them and things like that. But it's not okay to use quotes to just fill up word count and to get the original author of a quote to do the arguing for you. So what I'm going to do is just put it all in italics for now. Everything that's quoted, I'm going to put in italics. There we go. That'll make it stand out a bit. Threshold effect. Okay, now Gauss explains it by considering, it's not very good. I should explain, I shouldn't say Gauss explains it. What I'll do is I'll explain it with the lawn, just like Gauss did. And then I'll change the lawn example to something else which captures the same idea. Because if I just use Gauss's example, even though I cite it, it doesn't show that I understand it, right? It shows that I can just regurgitate someone else's explanation, right, of public harms, a threshold effect exceeded by public harms. So I'll highlight it all, I'll put it in italics or something so that in later drafts I know to make it an example of my own. All right. And I can put a little comment in there because Word has these, insert comment functions. Okay. So let's put a comment in here. Comment. All right. You may wish to put this in your own words rather than quote Gauss. Gauss. I always call him Gaussy Mousy in my head. I have no idea why. All right, so we'll leave that there. Comments to myself. And then here, what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go back to just home. I'm not sort of dealing with comments anymore. All right. Get rid of this navigation pane. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, consider a nice green lawn which can tolerate 10 people. So consider a nice green lawn situated between, nice green lawn between two buildings. Okay. And what I'm going to do is this. All right, because every time I use the example from Gauss, I should cite. All right. So the principle about the accumulation of whoa. What happened there? Did I get rid of something that I wrote? Between two buildings? What did I do? Yeah, okay, cool. That's what I want. Suppose the lawn can tolerate ten people regularly crossing it for their convenience because because the surrounding footpath takes longer to go between buildings. I'm going to walk between buildings. Let's say 9. 9 people regularly crossing it. Nice square number. 9 nins. Made me think of the band 9 Inch Nails. Okay. 9 people regularly crossing it for their convenience because the surrounding footpath takes longer to walk between buildings. Insert citation for Gauss. I don't know. This because doesn't make any sense because it's like saying that it's because the footpath around takes longer to walk between buildings is the reason why it can tolerate 9 people crossing it. So let's just write in between that for a while. Between 2 buildings, I'm going to say such that the surrounding footpath, such that, I'm just actually going to say such that, actually, which is such that, it's like I'm writing a mathematical proof. 2 buildings, which is quicker to cross than taking which is quicker to cross which is convenient to cross compared to the less direct footpath between the buildings. We've already said this too. Okay. Suppose the lawn can tolerate 9 people crossing regularly. Crossing it. Suppose the lawn can tolerate 9 people regularly crossing it. But 10 is too many and leads to dirt. Presumably, we all prefer a nice lawn to dirt, but presumably the crosses, the lawn crosses, the line steppers, okay? Presumably the crosses prefer a nice lawn over dirt, but reason that their contribution, okay, but reason that their degradation of the lawn does not exceed the lawn's threshold. Therefore, they argue, or would really conclude with therefore they argue they are not responsible for the dirt. All right, and there's the Pomodoro beat and the break. I'm going to tell you what I think we should do about these lawn crosses. Okay. I don't know if you can hear the audio. I doubt you can because you don't hear the beeps. Maybe I'll switch to computer audio for a second. But I'm going to try switching to computer audio. Or, same as system, I mean. These lawn crosses, man. Yeah. So if you couldn't hear that, just YouTube habitual line stepper. It's like a 16-second clip. Don't be a habitual line stepper. Otherwise, Charlie Murphy's gonna have to check you. I'm in the break, so I'm gonna make coffee. And I'm going to pause the Pomodoro break so that I have time to make the coffee and just like eat something really quick, a couple of pieces of popcorn, and I'll be back. Alrighty. I am back. Coffee. Grab my hoodie. Come on, let's find some way for this to work. Alright, favorite pillow in action. Need all the help I can get right now. Oh. Okay, Pomodoro break. Timer is counting down. It's like a minute to go on the break, but I might get started anyways because the break was a little longer. I'm getting coffee, eating some snacks. I didn't actually really eat some snacks. I just got a spoonful of Nutella because I'm a responsible adult. See, even Billy doesn't have it together all the time. Yeah, speaking of hoodies. Oh, imagine being like single when it comes into winter. And then you get a girlfriend in the winter. And then she steals your hoodie. That's like Kate Winslet jumping into the Atlantic Ocean. 1,000 knives stabbing your body all at once. Let's share this draft. How does Leonardo DiCaprio know that jumping in there feels like 1,000 knives stabbing your body all at once? If a good-looking rooster, he doesn't look like he's had that experience. Smooth baby face in that movie. No scarring. Okay, where were we at? Okay, so therefore they argue they are not responsible for the dirt. Okay. Oh, there's that horrible beep. Right. But we know we got to check him because they're habitual line steppers. Well, you know, that lawn crossing is kind of like the prisoner's dilemma, right? Okay, so, you know, like suppose, you know, if you alone walk over it regularly, the lawn's going to survive without any inconvenience to you. But if everyone else reasons that way, you're going to end up with dirt. Okay. I'm going to try and squeeze that in there somehow. Only you cross regularly. The lawn survives. And you are not inconvenienced. But if everyone reasons the same way, or alike would say words, the same way, we get a dirt patch. Presumably the crosses prefer a nice lawn over dirt, but reason that their degradation of the lawn does not exceed the lawn's threshold, therefore they argue they are not responsible for the dirt, for destroying the lawn. The lawn's destruction. Okay, so notice what I'm doing here is something that, you know, I catch myself doing every now and again. You've got to, I'm speaking outside of scenario now, you've got to catch yourself doing this, doing proofreading, editing stuff. Okay, you got to save that for later. Just punch out the draft. Save all that for later. Not responsible for the lawn. They're not responsible for the degradation of the lawn. For the destruction. the lawn. I am Shiva, destroyer of worlds. Okay. So this is an example of a threshold effect exceeded by public harm. And Gauss's public harm principle shows how they are responsible. Shows how they are responsible. Even though no individual is solely solely responsible for exceeding threshold. However, the removal of a single crosser would preserve the lawn, and it is in this sense that each crosser is responsible for their share of the degradation. Cool. Okay. So did a bit of typing there. I should go and insert these reference tags, these citation tags. Looks like there's going to be a lot of them stacked up in a row, but in proofreading and editing, I'm going to find ways to combine things into one sentence. Yeah, I'll probably cut sentences out. Okay, so I'm not too concerned about this right now, so long as nothing appears in my final submission that requires a citation and lacks one. Okay, this is an example. Threshold effect. Or the removal of any one lawn, the removal of a single crosser would preserve the lawn, and it is in this sense that they are responsible for their fair share of the degradation. Now, if we had a metric that tracks, if we have a metric, okay, we don't have a metric that tracks the contribution we have a metric that tracks the contribution to the lawn's tracks how much each crosser contributes to the lawn's destruction. So we cannot divide the responsibility in proportion to each cross's contribution. However, there are metrics that track greenhouse gas emissions with respect to individual nations. Metrics can help us determine fair distribution, greenhouse, fair distribution of the economic cost greenhouse gas emissions reductions reduction between nations or states. Okay? So public harm principle holds each nation responsible for their fair share of the degradation, their fair share of environmental degradation. Principle holds each nation responsible for their fair share of environmental degradation. You know, that share could be zero if some nation emits no greenhouse gases. In that case, their fair share would be zero. They wouldn't be a part of the agreement in the first place if that was the case. So yeah, once they're part of the agreement that involves, once they're part of the agreement to coerce each other, mutually agreed upon coercion, it's implied that they are nations that are emitting. So the public harm principle holds each nation responsible for their fair share of environmental degradation and degrassi Tyson degradation and I don't spell, I sound. The public harm principle holds each nation responsible for their fair share of environmental degradation and emission metrics offer a feasible is that what I did the first time? Feasible. That's not how it is. Feasible. All right, you win. You win. It's an A. Well, for feasible means of tracking emissions respect to individual nations. Emissions between nations. It sounds like the emissions are going between the nations. Magnitude of emissions across individual nations. It's very clunky. I would get like fixed up. Okay, so now let's just scroll out, see how that looks. All right. So it looks like we've got a second draft done. Save that. Then go back. I'm going to consult my essay task sheet. And it's 10 minutes left on the Pomodoro. I think that's going to be all we'll need. Okay, so it's task sheet. All right, we know we've covered this. Why might world leaders be hesitant to reduce carbon emissions despite the danger to the planet? Prisoner's dilemma. Are economic sanctions necessary? Yes. I argued yes. Why or why not? Well, for why, I argued because we're in a prisoner's dilemma, so non-cooperation is the cheaper alternative if there aren't economic sanctions, so we need them. Propose at least one solution. Okay, well, if we've solved, if we've argued that economic sanctions are necessary and we've provided a good argument, then perhaps we've solved the economic sanctions problem, but a further problem remains, and that's how we distribute fairly the economic burden of cooperation. And we can achieve that with metrics that track how much each nation emits. And furthermore, there's the issue of world leaders being upset about having to take on more economic burden than other nations when the economic burden exceeds, in a relative sense, the degree to which they're contributing to environmental degradation, and might think that they're not one of the nations that push the Earth's threshold over the limit, but we slapped that with Gauss's public harm principle, which showed why they were responsible. So this is a second draft, okay, and pretty much done with the second draft. What we would do now is the following. I'm just going to speak outside of scenario for a second. Okay, so notice what I did here when I go down to paragraph 3. Well, yeah, here, I might want to put this comment in that says something like, like explain specifically which clause does what in the argument down here. So, like each nation is responsible for their fair share of the cost. Well, it would be clause 2. That's what would apply there. Clause 1. Yeah, clause 1 was more to do with like prohibiting things, and we might not actually apply clause 1 because we aren't talking about prohibiting anything. So I don't know if I shared that. Yeah, I don't think I was sharing that. Okay, so we can go back to sharing the draft. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. Gauss's public harm principle. It's got these 2 clauses, so it would be wise to explain where each clause fits in down here. So, you know, rather than have this look clunky, have comments all over the place, I'll add to this comment also. Make sure you clearly indicate where the clauses apply, you know, in the rest of this paragraph. Okay, great. Okay, all right, back in scenario now. I'm the student writing the essay. Okay, so I should copy all of this, save it, start a new document. And that new document is going to be a third draft because this thing's going to get better with each draft. But some stuff isn't complete. All right. And you know, for the moment, I'm just going to call this draft 3. Yep, great. My comment copied across. Okay, now what I will do is I'll save this one in the same writing folder. So that's draft 3. And what I'm going to do now is, before I delete these headings to make it look more like a draft, okay, I don't delete the headings until I've consulted the task sheet and I'm confident I've addressed what I need to. Because if I realize I haven't, then I know which paragraphs to look in and things like that. So this is draft 3. What I'm going to do is provide a template for the introduction. And what that would be is topic sentence 1. So, you know, like topic sentence, body paragraph 1, plus body paragraph 2, plus objection paragraph 4. So I'm just going to call that objection paragraph 3. And what this is really is now is body paragraph 4. So there's four paragraphs all up, not including introduction and conclusion. We're sitting at 1,636 words, so we've got to cull 400 words somewhere, but there's plus or minus 10% margin, so 1,200 plus 120 is going to give me 1,320. That's really about, you know, 300. Sorry, it's yeah, about 310 words, 316 words, around about that we'd have to cull. But good news. Bam, 1392. All right. Just for consistency, I'll go Control X, Control V. I'm going to backspace up here. Oop, like that. All right. Now suppose just 1 stands for the topic sentence and body paragraph 1. Okay. What I'm going to do is this. Thesis statement equals 1, the topic sentence of body paragraph 1, plus the topic sentence of body paragraph 2, plus the topic sentence of body paragraph 3, plus the topic sentence of body paragraph 4, where I equals the topic sentence of body paragraph I for I in the set 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, now I'm going to speak outside of scenario. So I'm dropping scenario. That's how you craft the thesis statement. So it really just falls out of what you've done, which means I'm going to go down here. I'm going to write that there as well. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is the following. I am going to do stuff like this. Okay, I'm going to delete that. All right, there's a topic sentence. Okay. And then the linking sentence, come chill up here. The rest of its family. All right. And I can get rid of that. And that's going to call some words. I'm going to leave the topic sentences in there because I need to be able to find them easily to create my thesis statement and conclusion. All right, but I can get rid of that because that's linking sentence. I can get rid of that because that's linking sentence. Okay. Now I can get rid of these titles. Hiya. Oh, there's the beep to say the Pomodoro is over. I know I obey the beeps, but would like these to be short. This video to not be any longer than it needs to be. Okay. Making everything into paragraphs, delete that. So all that remains that's highlighted is thesis statement. After we delete this. Okay. So it's thesis statement and the conclusion, which is made up of our topic sentences. Right, not word for word, but yeah, it's generated by the topic sentences of our paragraphs. That goes up there. Okay, so we should have nothing but topic sentence and thesis statement highlighted. Great. We're sitting at 1380 words, so not much to cull. Now, what we can do, this is saved as draft 3. So let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of, let's leave introduction and conclusion there. Yep. All right, so sitting at 1378. So now let's write our thesis statement. So really, topic sentence, there are reasons why world leaders will not voluntarily reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, and that's because of prisoner's dilemma. So let's actually write this. All right. I argue that world leaders will not voluntarily reduce their greenhouse reduce their nations, then apostrophe afterwards because it's a plural. It's plural possessive. So nations, greenhouse gas emissions because they are in a prisoner's dilemma with respect to environmental conservation. All right. So there's body paragraph 1, which means we come up here and we delete 1 and probably the plus. All right, then we go down. What's the other topic sentence? Mutual coercion between states in the form of economic sanctions can compel world leaders to reduce emissions. Okay. All right. However, economic sanctions can help compel world leaders to reduce the nation's emissions and help them escape the prisoner's dilemma. All right, and then what was the next topic sentence? Some world leaders may argue that it's wrong to use coercion against other states. All right, so the break is over. Back in the Pomodoro. I address an objection. I consider an objection that it's morally that it's immoral to impinge on a nation's liberty with economic sanctions, and address it. And how did I address it? And address the objection with an appeal to, what did I appeal to? So there was the fact that it's really the other nations whose liberty are more significantly impacted. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Address the objection. And argue in response that the denial of a that the failure to avoid catastrophic environmental and economic damage as a result of climate change due to non-cooperators constitutes a denial of a greater number of liberties than does The application of economic sanctions. The application of economic sanctions. It's very wordy, but proofread. That's what proofreading and editing is for. Economic sanctions. Okay. Now, what next? Sip of coffee. That's what's next. Oh, that was more than a sip. That was like a swig. That's a sip and a half is a swig. That's the technical term. I'm pulling the blanket up. That's what's happening now. Let's sit up a bit. There we go. All right. Where was that? It's in the intro. Oh yeah, we dealt with 2, so we can delete 2, right? Then we just dealt with 3, which was the objection. So now we're left with 4 and 4. Okay, yeah. Okay. Now, so finally, I propose a solution to I suggest a means of I suggest a way to divide the economic cost of greenhouse gas emissions reduction between nations fairly. Finally, I appeal to Gauss's public harm principle to argue that each nation is responsible for their fair share of the economic cost of environmental conservation, and suggest a way to divide the economic cost and suggest metrics as a means of practically determining as a means to, so we don't have to use ing words, as a means to practically determine fair shares. All right, there's an intro, and I can go, well. Great, now get rid of all this stuff. Okay. And get rid of a topic sentence. Not a topic sentence, like a tag for a topic sentence is what I mean. The highlights. Okay. The comment. Okay. So now what we do is we say down here, I have argued that I'm not going to write the conclusion because it's basically the intro. The intro tells the reader So now I'm speaking out of scenario. So, you know, the introduction tells the reader what you're going to argue, and the conclusion tells the reader what you have argued. So I have argued that, put in brackets here, the viewers follow the Mickey Mouse shaped head bouncing ball like in the subtitles of a Mamma Mia sing-along movie. Okay? All right. Yeah. Okay, so did you see how like the introduction wrote itself? All right, I'm going to backspace it. Okay. If anything, I'll come up here and go Control E. Then I'm going to go bold, underlined, italics, up the size a bit. I'm going to go title, right, because I'll need one. All right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control A. I'm going to go do some formatting. I like to use justified text. I've read some essay writing books that say don't do it. Some essay writing books that say do it. I've submitted both as like an experiment, as to, you know, to try and sort of falsify one of the hypotheses. And I've never sort of been criticized for either. So you obviously wouldn't get criticized for left aligned text. I think you'd be more likely to get criticized for justified text. But I like how it looks when it's justified. You know, there's no sort of, I don't have like a logical or practical reason for it. So now let's say we delete this. All right. And this, imagining that we've written our conclusion. All right. Okay. Now I've justified it all. And now we're going to go to paragraphs, and we're going to go to line spacing. We're going to go to 1.5. Then we're going to go OK. And then we are going to change the text to Times New Roman, right? And you can keep it at size 11. But the bigger the font is, the easier it's going to be to read and proofread and edit and stuff. So what I'm going to do here is change all that to, I don't know why it's not consistent with the sizing, but yeah, change it all to size 12 from size 11. And that's also a good size to submit with. We haven't done any proofreading or editing, and we are at 1,503 words, and we've got 1,320 to play with, right? Which means we have to cull what, 1,500 minus 1,300. It's going to be 200. All right, minus 20. It's going to be 180 minus 3. Right, is going to be 177. So we need to cull 177 words. So let's just see how much 177 words is. It's 14, 27, 41, 56, 71, 84, 98, 100. Okay, so that many words. And with enough proofreads and edits from draft to draft, it's pretty easy. So now from here, it would be up to you whether you wanted to just keep working in this, or every time you do a proofread and an edit, you sort of save a new draft. That's really up to you. I used to just keep saving new drafts. Nowadays, I just work in the one document to like I have reasons for doing it one way and reasons for doing it another way. But you know, yeah, I won't tell you what to do there. Now it's easier to proofread and edit with hard copies. So, you just save this, you'd print it, and you go through, you red pen stuff, um, and you don't amend as you go. Because what will happen is you'll find something to fix. You'll be like, okay, like this, you maybe say you red penned the draft and said this is too wordy. Well, then you'll find something to fix, and then you'll start working on fixing it. And you spend all this time on one sentence and you haven't actually done a proofread. Okay, so proofread first and put all your feedback in there with red pen or however you want to do it, highlighting and then writing on the draft. Then go back. So you're away from the laptop when you're doing this. Then you go back and you make all your corrections. And when you are proofreading, you're reading it aloud, okay? Not in your head, because things sound better in your head when you read them than they do when you say it out loud. So you apply the more stringent quality test, the more discriminatory quality test, right? And you read aloud, okay? And yeah, this draft is like, compared to what a final submission would look like, not very good. But the thing is, we pumped it out and now we have something to work on and polish. And it's the polishing process that's going to make it better and better and better. And, you will have noticed there's some language that I use that's like kind of silly, kind of makes me sound silly to write it. I don't care, because no one's ever going to see that except me. And like however many people watch my YouTube channel. But if I was actually doing an assignment and not doing an essay writing series on YouTube, the only person who would see the embarrassing drafts are me. Okay, I'm the one who's going to see them. And it's kind of like when you're in class and you take notes and you spell something incorrectly and you don't care about correcting it because no one's ever going to see it except you. And you don't want to waste time correcting spelling mistakes in class as the lecturer is talking. You just want to keep capturing the important points they say and focusing and trying to learn. And then maybe you rewrite the notes after the lecture, so they're all nice and aesthetically pleasing, good to look at, make you feel good about studying, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just to reiterate, if you're watching this video and you've been sitting here saying like, oh, that was such a silly way to say what he was thinking. Well, you are right. But the goal here is just to pump out a draft and then polish the silly blemishes off, buff them out, so to speak. Okay, so I think I've made that point clear. All right, and let's scroll out and look at it. The other thing I was going to mention is, like myself, you may have a preference not to print off hard copies, and you might not have a printer at home, especially because of the, like the social distancing measures that are in place at the moment. So you might not have a printer at home, you might not be able to print, but even despite all that, you might not like to print because it uses paper. So the other thing you can do is use this comment function here, like I have, okay? And that comment function is pretty good because one of the advantages it has compared to printing it off on paper and then, red penning it and stuff, is that you can see here that the paper doesn't have a lot of space. Imagine you printed this, it wouldn't have a lot of space for you to write in the margins and stuff. And, let's say if like it was something on this line that you wanted to write a comment on, and there's something on this line that you want to write a comment on, it can get pretty crowded and sometimes you can make mistakes and stuff. Whereas with this commenting function, it really just highlights in red what's been commented on precisely, because you can make the highlight very precise. Otherwise, when you're doing it in red pen, you have to put brackets, you have to left bracket and then right bracket, and then write a comment on it and indicate somehow that the comment, the feedback you're giving yourself pertains to the text in between the two brackets. Yeah, you got to use colors for that stuff, otherwise you miss things. So yeah, red pen, highlighting, all that kind of stuff. Whereas you can see with the comment function in Microsoft Word, you don't have this issue at all. Okay, see how it's just going to blow this right-hand side of the console up to whatever size it needs for you to be able to read the essay draft and work in it, and write as much feedback as you can. You don't have to worry about a physical piece of paper and losing it, that had all your feedback on it, then having to proofread and edit again. So it's all here. Okay. So I'm not actually going to go further with this draft and proofread it and edit it. It's I think it's sort of I was going to do a video on proofreading and editing, but I probably won't. I mean, I might in the future, but just as a general thing, not for not specifically for the course that you're doing, or like for the students in this course, just in general. So yeah, yes, for you, but like for everyone, and this is on YouTube, so everyone can see it anyways. But yeah, I think I'll not anytime soon, but I will do some proofreading and editing videos because I plan to stay active on my YouTube channel. So I think this is it. I'm just trying to make sure that there's nothing I've forgotten to mention. We haven't referenced yet. So one way to reference is, you might use a different way. You might actually reference as you write. I don't like to do it because I don't like to change tasks. So I don't like to go from like writing to referencing, like drafting a paragraph and then I have to stop and then I have to reference and then I go back to drafting the paragraph. I want my thoughts to keep flowing so that I keep getting them down on the page and getting the draft out, right? So I don't reference as I go because I don't want to I want as many, I want to take as many measures as possible to stop my thoughts from being interrupted and from slowing them down from getting onto the page. So yeah, that's why I don't reference as I write, but it's really up to you. I'm just telling you why I don't. Now, when you do go to reference, what you're going to do, or what are you going to do if you use what I've used, is you're just going to Control F, left bracket. Okay, and you're going to see that there's 22 results. And then you're going to go through and you're going to count how many of those brackets there are, that are actually references. So I see that there's one here. Well, probably easy to count how many that aren't. So there's one here. That's not a reference. There's one there. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to count this one about the Mickey Mouse head bouncing ball. 6. Okay. So it's just going to be 22 minus 6 is 14. So you're going to have to reference 14 times. So in other words, when your references are completed, like let's suppose, which it isn't, this is our final draft, right? Once your references are complete, you would have 6 results when you Control F, left bracket. Yeah, and that's how you know that you referenced. And then, you're going to go up here and you go to referencing. I like to use Endnotes. I'm not talking about the software Endnotes. I'm talking about the referencing style. So the referencing style is Chicago 16th. It's a preferred referencing style in philosophy, but for your assignment, use any referencing style you want, so long as it's consistent. Yeah, so when you go in here, if you want to use endnotes, you're gonna have to go in here and there's footnotes. All right, well, that makes the sources appear at the bottom of each page, and you want them to appear at the end of the page. So you'll hit Endnotes, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to make sure it appears as numbers instead of, like I for one, I for two. Yeah. So you want numerals, okay? And it's going to start at 1. The numbering is going to be continuous. It's not going to split up. For example, the numbering is not going to start again at a new paragraph. You want to apply the changes to the whole document. You want to click apply. All right. And then like I'm going to do an example of a reference. So let's say, so I'll just reference one thing. Is Gauss in here? No, let's just say I'm going to reference like Gauss. Okay, so I'm going to go new, right? Gauss, Gerald, F, add, okay. All right, type of source is book. You'd say book section if it's like a chapter or something. So book, and the title, social philosophy. That was the name of the book. Year. This is just an example. Hashtag hash. Percentage caret. City. Camelot. Publisher. Second suite. Book. Out. Put in place. Because ain't nobody got time for books that ain't heckin' sweet. Okay. And then you get okay. All right. Now what I'm going to do is down here, I'm going to come down and, okay, understand that the endnotes will appear here, right? So you'll put footnotes or, like the numbered citations in the text where they're required. And then you'll get down the bottom and you'll put in a bibliography after all the endnotes that appear here. So you'll cite, say, imagine if you cited that source 3 there, the tag for a citation. What you'll get is an endnote here that says where it's from, and then the rest of your endnotes. So it's going to correspond to the numerals. If that was like footnote 3, there'll be like an endnote 3 down here, saying what footnote 3 is. And then after that, you'll have a bibliography. So let's do 1. Source 3 was Gauss. Okay. So first, what it's helpful to do is to start a new page, because that's where your bibliography should appear, right? Then you go insert bibliography or references, right? And there we go. Gauss, Gerald F, year, hashity hash, percentage G caret. Social philosophy, published in the city of Camelot. And then the name of the publisher was heckin' sweet book output in place, because ain't nobody got time for books that ain't heckin' sweet. Let's suppose I realize I left something out. Well, what did I leave out? I left the pages out. So that's a hiccup. And what I do is I go to my source. So I'm going to stop sharing, show you I'll show you that source. So I'll share the screen, source 3, take a look at it. And I realized I read from page 183 to 189. So that's what I'm going to put in the Word document. And that is, my Word document was like the 3rd draft, I believe. Okay. And what I do is I go to manage sources. Okay. And I click on this and I click edit. And then look what was missed. Year title. It's a book section. All right. Social philosophy. So, right, whenever you go to book section, right, title refers to title of the section. There's book title down here. All right. Book author is going to be the same. So Gauss. Oops, don't need to put the commas in. Gerald, right? And then if you know the middle name, you put it in, but often it's abbreviated in the text itself. Even if you put it in full, the bibliography is going to abbreviate it anyways. So it won't appear differently if you put the middle name in full or if you put it in as a letter. Okay, so I'm going to hit tab down, enter, then okay. Right, now title here refers to title of the book section. All right, and in this case it was a chapter, so it'll say chapter whatever, right? Chapter money ampersand money ampersand, right? And then like the title of the chapter, public harms and common goods. All right, this is just from memory, like, you know, some of these details might be wrong, but that's what I think it was. Okay. What was the page numbers? I forget what it was, but say I go back and check my source, it was like, I think 184 to 189. Like, just suppose, like, I'm guessing, but I'm trying to guess from memory, but suppose that was it. Okay, and I hit OK. All right, now it says this source exists in your master list and current document. Do you want to update both lists with these changes? Up to you. Well, do you? All right, in my case, yes. And close this. Right, and now I go here and click in there, and this button here updates it. Okay, so see how it appears? I'm going to zoom in for you. Okay, once I hit update, but everything gets fixed. Okay, so it's that easy. All right, what's this function do? I've never clicked that. Oh yeah, just decides to change stuff. All right, let's see what that does. Convert to static text. Okay, how about we don't? I don't really know what difference that made, but anyways, now let's say I'm going to cite. This is a common mistake. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click, this is the mistake because I was actually about to do it right, is people often put the end note there, like between the last word of the sentence and the period. Okay, like the full stop at the end of the sentence. That's bad. That's bad. Don't do that. Okay. All right. It goes after, right? And, you know, citations don't always have to appear at the end of a sentence. It appears precisely at that part of the sentence where the information that isn't your own appears. Okay, just the citation goes where the information you got from other authors appears. Okay, now often just you'll argue yourself, use your own ideas, and then the next whole sentence will be something from another author, you know, paraphrased, of course, unless you are quoting. And yeah, the citation will have to appear at the end of the sentence. It's more common that it appears at the end of the sentence than otherwise in university essays, but in papers like journal articles and books, it seems to be the other way around. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, you put it there at the end of the sentence in this case. Now what you're going to do is you need to look up what the exactly what the conventions are for Chicago 16th, but it's going to involve something like this. It won't be all of this, right? I always have to remind myself what it is. But then you're going to come down here and notice I've only got the references there for like me to copy and paste into here, right? Now what you're going to do is after you've amended this according to the conventions of Chicago 16th endnotes, it'll involve doing something like this, backspacing that, putting a comma instead, and then the page that it was. So there's a function here that when you're editing one of the endnotes, you can do this. You click next footnote and it takes you back to the next one up here. Well, we've only got one, so it's going to take us back to that one. And it was page 183. Okay. And notice that, when I was amending it, I went from page 180. So let's pretend I got it right. It was from page 183 to 189. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go page 183 and then insert the full stop. And it's not going to appear like this. It's going to be whatever the conventions are. So, you'll have to edit and stuff. End note, not the referencing thing. Endnote. There's a software called Endnote that takes care of this kind of thing too. So you might like using that. Anyways, so let's say I went through and I did that with all my referencing. All you do is you do it here, and then you go back to show notes. That tells you where you were in the essay, so you know to continue forward from here till the next one, right? After you reference, you'll backspace the tag, okay, right? Don't backspace the tag before you put the citation in, okay? And notice how you just get a numeral there, and it doesn't make it look so clunky like in-text citations. And yeah, so now what we're going to do is going to grab this, see if we can drag it. It doesn't look like it. Can we drag it? Keep dragging. Keep dragging. Keep dragging. What happens if I do that? No, that didn't work. Control Z. Because what we really want, I'll show you, is the following. We want our endnotes to appear at the end of the essay, right? But we want this to appear on a separate page, okay? Because what the endnotes do is they kind of just tell you, like, where each individual citation comes from, okay? Because notice when you use in-text citation, they provide the page number and the author and the title, all that kind of stuff. Or it's like usually I think Harvard MPA is like author date. Sorry, Harvard APA is like author date. Yeah, it is. And they put all that info in the sentence. Okay, well, what this does is it just puts a number in the sentence, and then you can come down here and check if you want to know. Okay, so these just carry the information of your citations. When you get all these endnotes down here, they're not a reference list. They're not a bibliography. So you got to go down and you want to put it on a separate page. You see it will create a new line for you, and bam, you place it in. Okay, hit Control S. Now I'm going to scroll out because I want you to see this. I'm going to zoom out. Sorry. Okay, so you can see a bunch of pages there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the first document we started with, which we fleshed out. So it was a bare essay template. We filled it in, and that turned into an essay plan. Okay, so finish sharing and let's take a look. Okay, so I'm sharing the essay template. All right, there it is. All right, look at that cute little tacker. That's when our essay was just a puppy. Okay, I'm gonna close this navigation pane. Close. All right, there it is. All 364 words worth, barely any of which was, well, none of which was fleshed out argument. It was like an argument skeleton. All right. Compare that to our third draft. Whoa. Okay. Kind of just all fell out. Like it took time, but it really just fell out of firstly our template and then our plan. Go away, navigation pane. Your work here is done. Okay. You see that? That pleases me. Okay. So, because of where we are in the grand scheme of things, insofar as, time is concerned, this will be the last vid in the essay writing series. And at a later time, I'll make more videos just on my channel because I find it fun just to make content. But yeah, I hope this has been really helpful. And, if it isn't, that's because you don't need the help, because you're pretty good at writing essays, and that's best case scenario. That's what I want for you. So my desire is for you to not need me, even though I like having you around. So Billy loves all of you. It's been emotional.